Hi, folks. It's Keith Beardsley, A-Tory01, back with another edition of our A-Tory blog. I want to look today at something that's happened over the last week, and in this case, it's the resignation of Aaron O'Toole and, giving up his seat in the House and retiring. And first, I want to thank him. This was an exceptional Canadian and, served his country well in the military and in the House of Commons. One of the few MPs that from that era that I don't know. I've never actually met, but I did admire him for the way he presented himself and the way he presented his policies, even if I disagreed with some of them. Now, in his final speech, he pointed out something that's happening more and more. Any of us who do social media, I'm one, I'm in social media all over the place, you recognize what's happening in our modern politics. And O'Toole pointed it out. And this was a type of politics which thrives on divisiveness, on nastiness. And it's done basically through social media. Social media becomes the give all. You want to get that click. You want to get that social media giant to push your article, your video out. Well, you get that way by being nasty. You don't get that way by being nice. And a lot of people have said that, well, the days of being nice in the House and getting attention are gone. I would point you to Michael Chong, someone who's been under tremendous stress, been in the media constantly ever since what happened to his family has become public. But he's remained very dignified, very to the point, very civil. And look at the headlines he's gotten. Now, any Canadian who has a social media account, and pretty well everyone has something now, we've all seen the clickbait headlines, right? It doesn't matter in that headline if it's completely true, half true, partially true, or maybe even false. That headline is there to get you to click. And of course, the more clicks it gets, the further the social media giants push it out to more and more and more accounts. So we're seeing that with our politics as well. Political leaders thrive on that. And, Pierre Poilievre has done an exceptional job. Trudeau does it as well. They all do it. All right. Even the NDP. It's simply the way of life now, but you can't let that drive everything in our politics, especially within the House of Commons. So when we look at this now, we see there's your negative headline, there's the coverage. If you're on Twitter or you're any of these other ones, Facebook or whatever, at least until they cut us off, then you're going to see these headlines everywhere. But what it does do, it drives a wedge between Canadians. Social media has been an excellent tool for doing that, whether it's the pandemic and masking and vaccines, whether it's a housing issue, you know, any issue. Once social media gets involved, it becomes divisive. And the problem with every leader, and it doesn't matter which party they are or what generation they are, over time, leaders start to believe their own propaganda. They actually start to believe their own headlines. So you'll have Trudeau absolutely ripped apart by some. Is he necessarily a bad, horrible person? No. He's a Canadian with a different view to you. And that's something that we all have to remember. We are all Canadians. MPs in the House are representing all Canadians, not just a couple that got them elected. Keep that in mind when you're doing this. The decline of the civility in the House has been going on for a long time. I can remember I was there when the Liberal Rat Pack back in the early 80s and mid 80s dominated question period, dominated the news. I was there when Sheila Copps climbed across a big table to get at a Conservative minister. So civility in the House has been declining. There are very few ways to bring it back as long as everyone plays to social media. I would suggest a couple small ways. Number one, give the speaker real power. None of this wimpy speaker stuff. Look at the British House of Commons and the power the speaker has there. Give that type of power to our speaker. Let the speaker have the authority to clean up some of the nonsense and the language and the attacks in the House. And ministers, Liberal cabinet ministers, or whatever cabinet minister they happen to party that they represent, when they stand up and blatantly lie. These are things which should cost you your job, cost you your seat, cost you your time in the House. If an MP won't listen to what the Speaker is saying, toss him out. Cut off his access to the propaganda, to the social media. There are ways to do this. Get rid of the speakers list. Very few Canadians realize that in question period, the opposition parties give the speaker a list of questioners in the order that they want the questions asked. Why? Why should the leader's office control what an elected MP can do? If you go back to the 80s, MPs used to stand to be recognized, which is right. They'd all stand up at once, and the speaker would pick one of them to ask a question. So the government had very little control over it. Matter of fact, on the government side, there was time set aside in question period for government MPs to ask their own ministers questions. None of this softball, lobball nonsense we see now, where it's, would the minister explain this wonderful program? There were real questions then. And if a minister ignored his backbenchers, they'd stand up and ask a question in question period. Sort of keeps everybody on their toes. Do away with your cell phones in the House. Now, that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? Do away with holding paper and reading your questions out. Make them actually ask the question, as opposed to reading what someone in the leader's office wrote for them to say. Be a very different dynamic in the House. I just want to point out, every MP has a number of things in common with every other MP. You believe in Canada. You believe that you're there to make Canada a better place. You all believe that. You've all run for office, which is in itself an amazing feat. Absolutely amazing when you can do that. And you won, and those people want you to do your very best. Your other MPs, they're not your enemies. They may be Canadians with a different view on how to get things done, but they're still Canadians. If you go back to the PC Party and the Reform and the Canadian Alliance, we fought like crazy against each other for years. And when we amalgamated, we found out, man, they're really not bad guys on the other side. And there are a lot of good friendships formed from people who previously would not have been seen in the same room together. That's what politics does to you. It's up to you to step above that. Keep that in mind. Every MP in our House is a part of history. Every MP in our House is building a legacy. That legacy is one that your children will see, your grandchildren will see, and history will see. What do you want to be known as? An MP who was constructive and got things done? Or someone who chased clickbait? It's your choice. Keith Beardsley, A Tory 01, wishing you a great day.